Imperator Rome's next dev diary is here, and it deals with what could be your most important resource in the game, pops. For those unfamiliar with the term, a pop is a single population unit most recently used in Stellaris, another Paradox Grand Strategy title. Each individual pop in Imperator represents 100 people, and it will have their own religion, culture, and happiness. This means that there are definitely minorities in Imperator, and this leads into more potential issues in management, the greatest being happiness, as we're about to see. Happiness among your pops can be influenced by ideas, inventions, and trade goods, but the highest factor of influence is having your pops all belonging to the same culture and religion groups. The further divided your pops are culturally and religiously, the less productive they are, and the more they're tended to cause unrest in a city. Simple enough, you'll just need to work on unifying your pops to have the greatest increase in your happiness. While this on its own is not much of an issue, a rather large red flag has popped up in the process and execution of unifying your pops. This problem arose from a combination of a later excerpt in this dev diary, community feedback, and responses from Johan himself in the Paradox forums. To start, there are ways to force the unification of your pops to increase your city's happiness, as you can spend religious power to convert your pops to the same religion. This cost was not given, though it might sit around 10 religious power based on the rest of the dev diary. Okay, so that's a cool feature, paying to force convert your pops if you want a quick way to boost happiness. It's a relatively common mechanic in Paradox Grand Strategy games, but say you don't want to spend religious power on your pops, you want to use that power elsewhere, or you just don't have enough to spend just on your pops. That's alright, because it makes sense that when a pop stays in a more dominant state, culture, or religion, they'll eventually convert, right? Actually, not at all. And Johan himself confirmed this in the forums. There will be no slow assimilation of pops to state, culture, or religion. If, for instance, a pop inside of Rome has an Etruscan culture and follows, say, the Hellenic religion, that pop will always remain that way, with the exception of force converting him to the state religion of Rome. And no, there is no power or force that can convert culture whatsoever. This is kind of a big deal and raises some serious questions as to just how effectively or easily you can bring about a stable happiness in your cities and in the bigger picture, your empire. In the beginning, this will most likely not be an issue, with your starting regions most likely all being relatively close to the same culture and religion. As your empire grows larger and larger though, the chances of the majority of pops being your state, culture, and religion dwindle exponentially, a slightly troubling problem to say the least. Let's move on to another part of the dev diary that might give us some hope. Growth is of course something to consider in Imperator Rome. At all times, in all cities, there is either a single pop in growth or decline, depending on the growth rate of the city. As with happiness, there are several factors that contribute to the growth of a city. Terrain, your civilization value, the amount of pops already in the city, as well as access to certain trade goods will all be contributors to your growth. When this single pop has reached full growth, a new random pop will grow in its place. If the previous pop reaches quote-unquote full death, then a pop currently in the city will be picked for death, presumably random as well. Now what we see in the snippet is that the pop growing is of the same culture and religion that is present in this city already. This is good news and some hope, as it potentially means we can semi-weed out or dilute pops that are causing unrest or unhappiness in certain cities. We don't know from this screenshot if the 0.42% growth is high or low, though I'm really hoping it's a very low growth, as it would take over 200 months to grow a single pop, which does seem rather slow. If growing your own pop seems a bit too slow for you, Conquest is the quicker route. It's already been confirmed that we can sack cities, and that the loot you receive from sacking includes taking captives as slaves back to your capital city, where you can then redistribute them across your empire. This redistribution mechanic is going to be explained in more detail in a later dev diary, so if the logistics of it don't make sense yet, no worries, we should find out. What isn't mentioned in this dev diary is the potential risks and consequences of sacking cities. We're about to go into the roles that the various types of pops play, but while there are financial benefits to slaves, the red flag flag issue shakes up the system a bit, which to be honest is quite fairly historical in context. Your slaves will most often not share the culture or religion of the cities in which they get redistributed to. This in turn could have repercussions on happiness and cause major unrest in some cities. Again, historically accurate to a degree, and definitely more understandable in this circumstance, but still annoying as we can't just let them assimilate. We'd have to force them to our religion and just hope for the best. I've mentioned this in a previous dev diary, but Imperator Rome will have 4 different types of pops. Citizens are your highest ranking, providing research and commerce income. Next are freemen, including the plebs as Rome. Your freemen provide manpower as well as a tiny bit of research and income. Your tribesmen provide a very small amount of manpower and tax income, consisting of the more uncivilized pops in your empire. And lastly, we have slaves, whose purpose provides tax income. While there is a lot of debate in the forums currently on just what levels of citizenry and classes should be grouped into what category, as well as the names of the aforementioned categories, it should be pointed out that Paradox is simply using the system of its predecessor. This does seem a bit lazy to me on the part of Paradox, but there's larger issues at hand than semantics and classifications. For instance, let's look back a tiny bit on the whole conquering thing. Should you choose not to sack a city, or rather just take a city in full, once it's completely yours, all citizens in the city will demote to freemen, and freemen will become slaves. While strange and not necessarily accurate throughout history or really seen in a strategy game, this would not be such a huge issue if, like assimilating into state culture and religion, your pops would naturally rise the ranks of society. It makes sense to progress up that ladder so that one day a slave or tribesman can become a citizen. However, this progression system is also not available to you. No pop will naturally or progressively climb the social ladder by themselves. Instead, the only way for a pop to get to the next class is through manual promotion. In this case, 10 religious power will promote a slave or tribesman to a freeman, while it takes 10 oratory power to upgrade a freeman to a citizen. Once again, this system is common throughout Paradox titles, but a manual promotion only system just doesn't fit into this specific title. The level of micromanagement involved in your late game, balancing your pops, constantly promoting or demoting them across hundreds of cities would be disastrous. Perhaps there might be a system in place that could somehow automate the promotions process. There is a slim chance that maybe a governor or some edicts or just something could bring in a way to where the player will not have to cycle through each individual city constantly to level up pops, but that remains unknown to the community for now. This is the first dev diary in Imperator that has really brought a sense of dread for this game's potential. And of the 5 dev diaries so far, this one has certainly caused the most significant source of outcry and negativity. I've really enjoyed all of the information that's been released for Imperator up to this point, and this is a large reason why I wanted to bring this particular dev diary to light and really dive into why this current system just doesn't work for the game. And rather than be purely negative, it's my hope to generate some buzz and see if there is a constructive way forward that the developers might be willing to rework for the pop system. Because as it stands right now, it really just seems as though they took a mechanic from one game, slapped it in Imperator without thinking about the scope of this game and how it needs to be modified to fit well. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, do not hesitate to leave a comment on this video. I have absolutely no idea if the developers are watching my breakdowns, but each comment, each share, and each rating ensures that this video gets the maximum exposure to the Paradox community. You can also take part of the conversation by joining the Paradox forums and creating an account to actively engage in the grand strategy community. I hope you enjoyed the video and understand both the potential issue as well as my concerned reasoning on said issue. Stay connected to the channel and any future videos by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. I hope you enjoyed the video and understand both the potential issue as well as my concerned reasoning on said issue. Stay connected to the channel and any future videos by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. As always, this is Havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.